My beloved child, there is something about your soulmate's heart that you have not fully understood yet, and today, that hidden truth begins to come into focus. You may have thought the distance, silence, confusion, or unanswered feelings meant the story was slowly fading, but what if the opposite is happening? What if your soulmate has reached a point where walking away no longer feels possible? Somewhere inside them, a decision has been forming quietly. They have been replaying memories, remembering conversations, noticing the little things they once took for granted, and realizing that your connection affected them far more deeply than they ever admitted. This is why their energy feels different. They may not have said everything out loud, but their heart has been having a conversation of its own. And the most surprising part is this: they are beginning to understand that losing the connection would mean losing something they cannot easily replace. There was a moment when they tried to convince themselves that time would make everything disappear, but time only made certain memories stronger. The more they tried to move forward without facing what they truly felt, the more clearly your importance appeared. Something inside them kept returning to you. A song, a place, a message, a familiar phrase, a quiet moment at night. Small things became powerful reminders. And now your soulmate is looking at this love story differently. They are no longer asking, "How do I forget this?" They are beginning to ask, "What would happen if I stopped running from it?" That question changes everything. But here is where the story becomes even more unexpected, because your soulmate is not simply remembering you. They are reconsidering their own choices. There is a difference between missing someone and realizing you made a decision without understanding the full value of what you had. Your soulmate is moving into that second realization. They are looking back at moments where they could have spoken more honestly, moments where pride may have replaced vulnerability, moments where they expected you to somehow understand feelings they never explained. And now they are seeing those moments through different eyes. They are beginning to recognize that love cannot always survive on assumptions. It needs courage, honesty, and a willingness to stop hiding behind uncertainty. That is why this chapter feels different. Your soulmate may still have questions, but they are no longer comfortable pretending that the connection means nothing. There is an emotional shift happening within them, and it is becoming harder for them to ignore. They may have imagined several different futures, but somehow your story keeps appearing in the picture. Not because anyone is forcing it, not because everything is magically perfect, but because something genuine left an impression on both hearts. And there is one particular realization that could become the turning point. They are beginning to understand that sometimes the person you try hardest to forget is the person who taught your heart what it was actually looking for. That realization can make someone pause, rethink everything, and finally become honest with themselves. Now listen carefully, because the next part of this message carries the emotional center of your soulmate's transformation. Your soulmate is not giving up on this love because somewhere beneath all the confusion, they still believe there is something worth protecting. They may not know exactly how the next chapter will unfold, but they know they do not want the story to end through silence, misunderstanding, or unfinished feelings. Their heart is asking for another chance to understand what this connection truly means. Perhaps they have been appearing calm on the outside while carrying a completely different emotional world inside. Perhaps they have acted as though everything was normal while privately wondering whether you still think about them. Perhaps they have even questioned whether they waited too long. But one thought keeps returning: what if this story is not finished? That thought is becoming stronger. And when someone begins asking that question sincerely, their behavior often starts changing before their words do. They become more observant. They notice opportunities they once ignored. They reconsider conversations. They think about what they would say if they finally had the courage to be completely honest. Your soulmate may be approaching a moment where pretending becomes harder than speaking. And that is why you should not judge this story only by what has happened so far. Sometimes the most important chapter begins after both people finally understand what the previous chapter was trying to teach them. There is also a deeper reason this love story feels like it is changing. Both of you are not the same people you were when this connection first became meaningful. Time has a way of exposing what was real and what was temporary. Your soulmate is beginning to see that this connection survived questions, distance, uncertainty, and moments when either person could have simply stopped caring. Yet somehow, the emotional thread remained. That is what they are struggling to explain to themselves now. They may have told themselves they were finished thinking about you, only to discover that one memory could reopen an entire world of feelings. They may have tried to focus on everything else, only to realize that certain emotions cannot be dismissed just because they are inconvenient. And now comes the revelation that changes the direction of this story. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that giving up on love and giving up on fear are two completely different choices. They may finally be choosing to release the fear instead. The fear of rejection. The fear of being vulnerable. The fear of admitting they still care. The fear of discovering that you may no longer feel the same. But even with those questions, something inside them is saying, I need to know the truth. And when your soulmate reaches that point, the next chapter becomes less about guessing and more about revelation. Something they have kept inside for far too long is moving closer to the surface, and the reason your love story feels different right now may be because your soulmate has finally decided that some feelings are too meaningful to leave unexplained. There is a reason your soulmate has been unable to completely close the door on this connection, and it goes deeper than simple memories. Something about you reached a part of their heart that they were not prepared to explain. They may have tried to convince themselves that the feelings would eventually become quieter, but instead, certain emotions kept returning when they least expected them. And now they are beginning to realize that the real question was never whether they could forget you, it was whether they could genuinely feel the same without you. That is where their inner conflict begins. They remember the moments when your presence felt effortless, the conversations that stayed in their mind long after they ended, and even the smallest details that they once thought were insignificant. What surprises them most is how clearly they still remember you. They are discovering that some connections do not disappear simply because two people stop talking for a while. Sometimes silence makes the heart listen more carefully. Your soulmate is beginning to hear what they previously tried to silence. They are asking themselves what they would do differently if they could return to certain moments. They are imagining what honesty would look like now. They are wondering whether you still carry any of the same feelings. And beneath all those questions is one powerful realization. They do not want to look back someday and wonder what could have happened if they had simply been brave enough to fight for what mattered. But something even more unexpected is happening inside your soulmate. They are beginning to separate what they truly feel from everything that once influenced their decisions. Other people's opinions, past disappointments, misunderstandings, personal fears, and assumptions may have created confusion around this connection. Yet now, when they remove all those layers, one feeling remains. They still care. They may not know exactly how to express it, but the feeling itself has become impossible to dismiss. This is why their heart seems to be moving back toward the truth. And the truth is not that everything suddenly became perfect. The truth is that they finally understand this love deserves honesty. Your soulmate may be thinking about the words they never said, the explanation they never gave, or the moment when they should have reached out but stayed silent. They are replaying those choices differently now. There is an emotional maturity developing within them, because they are beginning to understand that love is not always about finding the easiest path. Sometimes it means facing uncomfortable truths and admitting that someone still matters. This realization can create a powerful change in the way they see you. You are no longer simply someone from their past or someone they once cared about. You are becoming the person connected to a chapter they still feel has unfinished meaning. And that is why the story is shifting, not because someone is forcing an outcome, but because your soulmate is finally becoming honest with themselves. There is one thought that may be especially strong in their mind right now. What if I have been looking for peace by walking away from the very conversation that could have given me clarity? That question can change everything. Your soulmate may have believed that distance would automatically provide answers, but distance only gave them more time to think. And thinking gave them perspective. They started noticing patterns. They started understanding why certain moments affected them so deeply. They began realizing that they were not simply missing your presence, they were missing the emotional connection they felt when they were truly themselves around you. That distinction matters. Because now they are not just remembering the relationship, they are remembering who they became when they felt understood. And suddenly, the possibility of losing that forever feels much heavier than they expected. This is where their determination begins to grow. They are not willing to let the story be defined only by its most confusing chapter. They want to understand what could exist beyond it. They want to know whether the bond can become stronger through honesty rather than assumptions. And perhaps the biggest surprise is that your soulmate may already be preparing themselves emotionally for a conversation they once avoided. They may be rehearsing words privately, wondering how you would respond, imagining the first moment of honesty, and thinking about what they would finally admit if they were given the chance. The story may look quiet from the outside, but inside their heart, something is moving. And now we reach the part your soulmate has been trying hardest to understand. Why does this connection still feel significant after everything that has happened? The answer may be simpler than they expected. Some people enter our lives and leave memories. Others leave lessons. And occasionally, someone leaves a mark so deep that time does not erase it, it gives it meaning. Your soulmate is beginning to recognize that this connection changed them. It challenged them to understand love differently, to confront their own emotional habits, and to recognize what they truly value. That is why they are not giving up. They are beginning to believe that the story deserves a more honest chapter than the one they previously allowed it to have. They may still move carefully, but careful does not mean disconnected. It can mean they are taking the feelings seriously. It can mean they are thinking before they act because they no longer want to repeat old mistakes. And somewhere in that quiet transformation is a powerful possibility. The next time your soulmate chooses to express what is in their heart, it may come from a completely different place. Not from confusion. Not from pride. not from trying to prove anything, but from finally understanding the value of what they almost allowed themselves to lose. Your love story is changing because the person who once questioned the connection is now questioning the decision to walk away from it, and that is a completely different kind of realization. My beloved child, something has shifted in the way your soulmate remembers you, and this time it is not just about missing your presence. They are beginning to understand the meaning behind everything they felt with you. For a long time, they may have looked at this connection through the lens of confusion, timing, distance, or uncertainty. But now they are looking deeper. They are asking themselves why your name can still change their emotions, why certain memories still feel unusually vivid, and why their heart never completely accepted the idea of moving on. The answer they are slowly discovering is that they never truly finished the emotional conversation they were having with you. There were words left unsaid, feelings left unexplained, and questions that never received an honest answer. Your soulmate is realizing that silence did not erase those things. It simply gave them more time to grow. And this is where their determination becomes stronger. They are beginning to believe that if something still matters after all this time, perhaps it deserves to be understood rather than abandoned. They may have imagined that forgetting you would eventually become natural, but instead, life kept reminding them of what they felt. A familiar place, an old memory, a random moment of quiet, something would suddenly bring you back into their thoughts. And every time it happened, they were forced to confront the same realization: there is still something here that they cannot explain away. The most surprising part is that your soulmate is no longer looking only at what went wrong. They are starting to remember what was beautiful. They are remembering the emotional safety, the laughter, the small moments that seemed ordinary at the time but now feel incredibly valuable. They are remembering how certain conversations made them feel seen without having to explain every detail. And slowly, their perspective is changing from "why did this happen?" to "what did this connection teach me?" That question has opened a completely different door inside their heart. They are recognizing their own mistakes without needing to blame you. They are recognizing where they held back, where they misunderstood you, and where they allowed fear or uncertainty to speak louder than their feelings. This realization is uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Because once someone stops defending their past choices, they can finally decide what they want to do differently. Your soulmate is reaching that stage now. They are not interested in pretending that nothing happened. They want to understand it. They want to learn from it. They want the next chapter, if there is one, to be built on something stronger than assumptions. And there is one particular thought that keeps returning: if they still have feelings after everything, maybe those feelings were never as temporary as they once believed. That thought is becoming harder to ignore, and it is changing the way they see the possibility of you and them again. Then comes a moment your soulmate may not have expected at all. They begin imagining what it would feel like to finally be honest with you. Not a perfect speech. Not dramatic words. Just the truth. They imagine telling you what they were afraid to say before. They imagine admitting that they cared more than they showed. They imagine explaining why they became distant, why they hesitated, why certain decisions were made even when their heart was saying something different. And in those private thoughts, they realize something powerful: they are not afraid of the conversation itself anymore. They are more afraid of never having it. That is a major emotional shift. It means the fear that once kept them silent is losing its influence. They may still be nervous, but nervousness is different from unwillingness. Their heart is moving toward courage. They are beginning to understand that love cannot grow when everything meaningful remains hidden. And this is why your story may feel as though it is quietly building toward something. The energy is no longer centered on whether they care. That question has become much clearer inside them. The real question is what they are willing to do with those feelings. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that love requires choices, not just emotions. It requires showing up, listening, communicating, and allowing two people to meet each other honestly. They are thinking about that now. They are considering what they could change, what they could say, and what they could finally stop pretending about. And just when you think the story has revealed everything, there is one deeper realization waiting beneath it all. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that their greatest regret may not be that things became complicated. Their greatest regret may be that they underestimated how much this connection would continue to matter. They thought time would make the feelings smaller. Instead, time gave them perspective. They thought distance would make the memories disappear. Instead, distance showed them which memories were worth keeping. They thought they could simply close the chapter. Instead, they discovered that some chapters cannot be closed until the heart understands the lesson inside them. And now they are standing at that emotional crossroads, realizing that giving up would be easier only on the surface. Deep down, they still want to know what this love could become if both hearts were allowed to speak honestly. That realization does not guarantee a perfect ending, but it does reveal something important. Your soulmate has not emotionally abandoned this story. They are still thinking, still processing, still learning, and still carrying the possibility of a different future within them. The love story is changing because they are changing. And when the person changes who once could not express what they felt, the entire meaning of the connection can change with them. What comes next may begin with something very small, a message, a conversation, a simple question, or an unexpected moment of honesty, but behind that small moment could be everything they have been carrying inside for much longer than you realize. There is a moment coming in this story when your soulmate may finally stop asking whether they should let go and start asking what they can do to understand this connection properly. That shift is powerful because it means their heart is no longer focused on escaping the emotions. It is focused on making sense of them. They have spent enough time thinking about what happened, what was left unsaid, and what they wish they had handled differently. Now they are beginning to see the bigger picture. They are realizing that the connection was never only about attraction or memories. It was about the way the two of you affected each other's emotional world. That is why they keep returning to the same thoughts. They remember your reactions. They remember your voice. They remember moments when you understood them without needing an explanation. And perhaps most importantly, they remember how different everything felt when they allowed themselves to be genuine around you. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that this is what they were trying to find when they looked elsewhere for answers. They were not simply looking for another person. They were looking for the feeling they experienced when they felt truly connected. And now they are realizing that feeling cannot simply be replaced. This realization may make them quieter for a while, but that quietness is not necessarily an ending. Sometimes a person becomes quiet because they are finally listening to themselves. Your soulmate is doing exactly that. They are examining their own heart with a level of honesty they may not have had before, and the conclusion keeps leading them back to the same place: this love still matters. But now the story takes another turn, because your soulmate is beginning to think about what they would say if they had one completely honest opportunity with you. Imagine all the sentences they have rehearsed privately, all the explanations they never gave, all the emotions they buried beneath normal conversations. They may want to tell you that they noticed more than you realized. They may want to explain why they pulled back, why they hesitated, or why they sometimes appeared unaffected when they were actually processing far more than they showed. And there is something they may finally understand: pretending not to care does not make caring disappear. It only makes the truth harder to express later. That is why they are becoming more serious about this connection. They are no longer interested in protecting an image of themselves if that image requires them to hide what they genuinely feel. They want authenticity. They want clarity. They want to know where you stand, but they also want to reveal where they stand. And somewhere inside this process, they are realizing that love becomes stronger when two people stop trying to read each other's minds. That could be the most important lesson your soulmate has learned. They do not want you to guess anymore. They want to communicate. They want to replace assumptions with actual words. They want to replace uncertainty with understanding. And although they may still be moving carefully, their direction is becoming clearer. They are not turning away from the connection. They are preparing themselves to approach it differently. There is also something your soulmate has begun to notice about you from a distance. They see that you have changed too. Perhaps you are no longer waiting for answers in the same way. Perhaps you have become stronger, calmer, or more focused on your own life. And that has affected them more than they expected. They may have assumed that you would always remain emotionally available in exactly the same way, but seeing you grow has forced them to recognize something important: if they truly value this connection, they cannot depend on yesterday's version of you. They have to meet the person you are becoming. That realization creates urgency, not fear, not pressure, but emotional clarity. They understand that love cannot remain frozen in the past. If there is going to be another chapter, it must be built by two people who have learned from everything that came before. This is why your soulmate is reconsidering their approach. They do not want to return simply to repeat old patterns. They want to understand what would make the connection healthier, more honest, and more meaningful. They are thinking about communication. They are thinking about consistency. They are thinking about the small actions that prove sincerity more than dramatic words ever could. And that is where the title of this story becomes real. Your soulmate is not giving up on this love because they are beginning to understand that real love is not measured only by how intensely someone feels. It is measured by how honestly they are willing to show up.